just said to Warren, this is financial suicide. Who does this? My heart felt so in my chest. I was grieving for my country, standing at the Red Sea. And I'm thinking, I don't know how we're going to move forward. We can't go back, and trusting God for his provision. And it was terrifying. As a family, we would pray for things, and he would answer our prayers in the most miraculous way in terms of provisions. And so many miracles, miracle after miracle after miracle. And now we have a church. We have a fully fledged church that it's miraculous. It just needs your yes to say, Lord, here I am.
Welcome to M-powerTV, where we leave a legacy of hope through conversations that uplift, educate, and inspire. Listen to incredible stories of people who overcame challenges and barriers. Celebrate victories, learn from setbacks, and push forward together. Want to be empowered? Let's go.
In studio today is my beautiful friend Jane Blackbird. She and her husband Warren is the lead pastors at Church Experience in West Chase, and they know all too well about the pain of failed plans. Jane, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. It's such an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you, my friend. This is a privilege for me to be on your show. But it's a privilege to know you and to be friends with you. And I'm just so thankful for the way we connected and the way we met. And that's just so thankful for this connection. So thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Absolutely. And this is exactly how we met and how this started is, of that first encounter and me meeting you and Warren literally directly after you guys came over to America and gave up everything you had in South Africa. And I was amazed that you guys were standing so strong. But tell us about that experience.
Yeah, no. Fake it till you make it, girl. We were crumbling inside, but trying to be brave on the outside.
You did a great job, I have to tell you. So that's one good key there, right? Fake it until you make it. But tell us, the day we met, you guys literally had your whole plan, your dream, your vision, everything that you had been praying for 15 years. You thought it had come to pass, and as you arrived in America, it crumbled. Nothing was there. Tell us about that experience.
The weekend we met you was Easter weekend last year, and that was a God ordained meeting. But we had no idea what lay in store for us. I'll take it one step back. 15 years ago, my husband and I got married, and funny little story. We said at our vows on our wedding day, which I thought sounded all romantic and full of love at the time. We used the words from Ruth, which said, "Where you go, I will go, and your people will be my people." And little did I know what lay ahead. 16 years later, Warren I had a love to go into corporate and to take on the business world after studying at university, and he just wanted to we both studied commerce, and he had this desire and this call in his heart to go into ministry, and shortly after we got married, he said to me, I need to tell you something. I want to go into ministry, and I want to be a pastor. And I looked at him and I said to him, I don't want to be poor. That was my answer. That was my response. We just newlyweds, and I was like, no. So that was 15 years ago. And so for 15 years, he wrestled and he prayed and he just dreamt about a call into ministry. And he felt a call to church plant. And of course, needless to say, I did not. And we were very actively involved in our church, and and we loved our church and we loved our community. But I certainly didn't feel a call to be in full-time ministry. I love business and corporate and studied commerce, and I wanted to, climb the ladder, and he had this desire to be a pastor, and I was like, how's this going to work out?
Wow.
Anyway, for 15 years, we pursued we were very involved in our local church, Always Community Church in Johannesburg. Loved our church, loved our community there. And Warren was just fortunate enough to have our pastor and his wife take us under our wing and gave Warren just opportunity to preach and to lead and for us to lead home group for 15 years and just to be involved in all the leadership aspects of church. And so we got to see and we got to learn really like on the job and hands on. So all that time God was like leading us and really grooming us and preparing our heart. And we had to go through quite a bit of tough season for that too. Anyway, for Warren, he says it was a 15-year journey to get to that point. and to really, really pray. And it took ages to get there, but God had to work, in us before he could work through us. Anyway, fast forward. All
I
these
love
years
that.
later,
I want to pause you there because that was so profound. That one thing that you were saying now is that God had to work in you first to enable to work through you. And I love that because that is a powerful thing that we sometimes forget, right? That we want to serve God, we want to work for God, we want to do things for God, but we don't really like it when God works in us because that's really painful. That's not nice.
It's the process. It's the process, it's like when you first get that dream and you get this vision, and Warren is saying, but this is a good dream. This is a good vision. Why is it taking so long to pan out? Like, what is going on? And all the time there was stuff that we had to work out in us and in our marriage and in our spiritual life. And God had to, it's that season of being rooted under the ground where you grow in the dark, where nobody sees it, and you've got these dreams and aspirations, but and what he's doing is he's putting down deep roots for the fruit that will come later. But at the time it's dark and it feels you can't really see, and you don't know when and how long you're going to be in the dark for. And so it was tough. We went through some tough sort of seasons of working this whole thing out, and Warren being very frustrated, and in the meantime I'm loving corporate, and I'm just going on and loving working and doing my thing, and this is great. I'm feeling fulfilled, and I'm just chasing that, and he's going, oh, there's something more, there's so much more, and anyway, so that was a bit of a journey, but like you say, God had to work in us before he could work through us, and so that was a journey.
So Jane, and you guys arrived in America, right? You left everything you loved behind in South Africa, especially you. I mean, for Warren, this was more of his dream and his passion coming true, but for you personally, everything you knew, your family, your life, your job, your career, your identity was left behind, and you guys came over to America. You were obedient, you were following your husband's calling, and arriving here, nothing was as it seemed. You guys were going to walk into this whole new church and ministry, and at that moment, there was nothing. Absolutely. How did that feel, especially for you? Because literally that was the one thing that you said that you never wanted, is you don't want to be poor. And here is this whole opportunity that you thought was going to create an income. You're unable to work, you don't have the visas, and it was just nothing. There was nothing there. The church that you thought that you were going to take over wasn't there. How did you feel?
It was tough. It was a tough journey. I mean, coming to America was not my dream. Like you said, it was Warren's dream. And I didn't want to leave my country. I didn't want to leave my people, my home, my friends, my family, my church, everything. It was really, really tough for me to leave. I struggled with that. The opportunity opened for us in Florida, in Tampa, with church experience. And this fantastic opportunity opened, and I wrestled and struggled with it, and it was tough. But I just knew that if I didn't want to. I came kicking and screaming. I always say I came kicking and screaming. Wanted to drag me along on this dream, and so I came quite resentfully, to be honest. It was hard for me to give up my identity, give up my job. And like you say, the tough thing was we were coming to a fantastic opportunity here to church plant. But what was taken out of my hands was my ability to earn and to be independent and to have my own career and my own dream. Because we arrived here on a religious visa, which meant we could only, we couldn't have alternate income. There was no plan B. We had to fundraise to get this church off the ground. And that was tough. That was tough for me, because I had to go from relying on myself to relying on God for dependence. And that was my weakest area of my faith, was trusting in God for His provision, and that's the area that I landed the deepest into. Right, he knew that was my area of weak point, and that's where he put me, into an area where my hands were tied. Legally, I was not allowed to work, and we just had to arrive here and trust in God for His provision. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I felt like He'd stripped me bare of my identity. I arrived here feeling anonymous and resentful towards my husband, resentful for just, I was a bit of a misery. For the first couple of months I arrived here, I was in absolute misery. It was tough.
And how did that change for you? How did you get to that place of being so, because I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, this is a excruciating place that you're describing now. I mean, looking back at it, it's a lot easier to talk about it now. But when you're in that place of absolute, it's excruciating pain and fear.
My heart felt so in my chest. I was grieving for my country, grieving for my life, grieving for my identity, and it was heart-wrenching. We didn't know, I couldn't see how we would survive. I didn't know financially how we would make it. I felt like it had been financially reckless, that we'd worked to get to ourselves to a point of so-called comfort and security and stability in South Africa, and we gave it all up at our age to come here and to start over. And I just said to Warren, this is financial suicide. Who does this? This is reckless, to arrive here in a country where we're not allowed to work. We need to fundraise just to survive. And I just, we arrived with no credit score, with all our life savings divided by 20 because of the South African rand, 20 to 1 US dollar. And I was like, this is mad. Who does this? I felt like I was living in, who does this? Who does this?
It's a living
and it
nightmare.
was me. I was living this reality.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. And nobody had forced us to leave, nobody had, we came here willingly, gladly. And I'm thinking, what have we done? Why did I agree to this? And so I struggled. I resented, like you said, I had a lot of resentment towards Warren for the first year. I just felt resentful. I'm like, how could you do this to our family? How will we ever recover? Anyway,
and how did that change for you? Where was the switch for you to get to that absolute agony and resentment because it was like all of a sudden, your whole mind shifted and things just started going right.
Yeah, so what happened was what I had to learn in the process, and this was a difficult thing for me, who's a bit of a control freak, and I like to have a plan, and I like to have a mapped out path, and this was no plan. There was no plan. There was no plan, and that was tough for me. That was really difficult for me, and I just had to learn. What I had to learn in that moment was to yield and to say to God, okay, your will be done, not my will. Like this is terrible. This is awful. This is going to end badly. I don't know how we're ever going to survive. We had no plan B. We couldn't go back to South Africa. We were trying to make it work here, starting a church from scratch, effectively knew nobody, knew nothing except, and just trying to get something off the ground from nothing in a foreign land, except for my husband's sheer determination that God would make a way and that he would provide, and but God, I mean, he believed and he trusted. He had such clarity and such determination this was going to work, and I had none of that. I was a wreck. I was homesick. I was miserable. And so it was my 40th birthday in September, and he sent me back to South Africa, and everybody thought, this is not a good idea. She's still crying and homesick, and this is not going to work out well, And I went back to, and saw, I went back to South Africa, and that was comforting for me. And I don't know, what it did was it just gave me fresh perspective. I think I got closure on that chapter that God had that season had closed, and I was now moving into a new season, and I came back with fresh eyes to see, oh my gosh, we have an incredible opportunity here, an incredible opportunity. It's very difficult for South Africans to get into the United States from a visa perspective, and we have an amazing opportunity, and oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for this opportunity. And something just shifted, and something shifted in my heart, and I suddenly had to realize, I got convicted that I needed to change my victim mentality. I had such a victim mentality. Woe is me. We've come here. We're African missionaries in America. Who does that? We can't, I had such a victim mentality, and I was convicted of that, and I had to change my mindset and just be super grateful and thankful for this incredible opportunity to be here, and realize that it's a privilege that very few get. And I suddenly looked around, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's incredible, it's amazing, it's beautiful, and I just had this radical shift in my heart, one of being thankful and one of being grateful, and I suddenly everything changed, and I just, my heart and my head changed, and
it's
suddenly the blessings
like
just started to flow.
Right, and it's almost like once you stopped looking back at what you had lost and started to look ahead at what you can gain. is like a big thing that happens. And that is a powerful thing, because in terms of victim and you know, when we get to that stage where it's just so painful. I mean, it's very hard to make that mind shift, but you know, the fact that God was able to show you that, I mean, that is so profound.
And I suddenly realized we'd had miracle after miracle after miracle. I used to feel like we were the Israelite, you know, standing at the Red Sea, and I'm thinking, I don't know how we're going to move forward. We can't go back. You know, and there was my poor husband as Moses standing at the Red Sea, like trying to part the waters, and I'm like moaning, dragging my heels, you know, Israelites, and so many miracles, miracle after miracle after miracle of this incredible provision. The very area that I lacked the most, that I lacked faith in the most, was the area that God was coming through. And as a family, we would pray for things, and He would answer our prayers in the most miraculous way in terms of provisions, and just for the most basic everyday needs. He would supply our needs daily, like that story of daily manna from heaven. I would say, I pray in the morning, Lord, we need this. I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know how it's going to happen. And literally that day, there would be this miracle connection, and this person would phone, and we would get this, and things would just fall into place, and I would be like, oh my gosh. And it surprised me, and it was these miracle little provisions, and the more I thank God, the more I recognize it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, it's miracle after miracle on this Red Sea road that we're walking, did I realize. And the more the miracles came, and the more the provision came, and suddenly I got to this point where I'm like, I'm overwhelmed by your goodness. And I've gone from this victim mentality of feeling, you know, just stripped bare and with nothing and fully dependent on God, thinking, oh my gosh, we are overflowing with miracles, overflowing with goodness, and God's goodness. You know, they say that God, Robin Wood taught us the saying that God honors the risks that we take for Him, and we took a giant risk. Like it was risky doing what we did. It's still risky. Like it was a giant risk. It was a financial risk. It was everything about it was risky. But God honors those risks we take for Him, and we're living proof of that. We really are. He has just poured out His favor and His abundance and His blessing on us in terms of His provision. But I had to walk that journey. I had to walk that road of trusting Him when it felt dark. And when it felt, you know, when I didn't know how things were going to come together, and I had to trust Him for that, you know.
And I think just the growth that you've had from that is exactly what you needed for the ministry that you're in now. Because when you're in ministry, I mean, let's be honest, you're the pillars, you're the people that others look up to, that others need to draw strength from. And just that power that you've learned now and the provision that you've seen from God is wonderful. So
I would have never learned that staying in the comforts of Egypt, you know. I would have never stayed there. Honestly, I sort of say this, I feel like church planting and immigration was harder than I could have ever imagined it would be. Harder. Like if you told me it was going to be this hard, it was 10 times harder. 10 times harder. Like more heart-wrenching, more difficult, harder than I could ever imagined it could be. But it's better. It's better than I could have ever imagined it could be as well. It's now better. It's better. Like just what the privilege. There's a real price. There's a real price to church planting and to doing ministry, but there's such a privilege to it. There's such a privilege. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, you know.
And if you can choose,
it comes at a cost, but it's incredible.
If you can choose it all over again, would you do this again?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question, because if you'd asked me this time last year, I would have said no, absolutely not. Like rewind, and now I feel like we're living in a freedom that I could not have comprehended before. I cannot comprehend, and I think it's just it really we do feel like we're now living in our promised land, because it's just a freedom that comes from finding your purpose. When you find your purpose that God has ordained. Warren says we're 19 weeks into our church plant. We launched on Easter, miraculous start, small beginnings, humble beginnings. Last year we started in our home. We just started meeting with a couple of people in our home, and it grew and it just grew and grew. And God built His church. He says that He'll build His church, and I didn't know where the people would come from. I didn't know how, but He says that He will build His church, and He adds, and so He's added the people miraculously.
I mean, now you guys have a full church, like you have a full venue, you have a beautiful church, this is just, it's mind-blowing to see where you were last year and where you are today. It's for me from the outside, it's a profound miracle, and it builds my faith, because I'm like, well, if God can do that for her, I mean, she can do that, he can do that for me. So I think it's just such an incredible thing, not only for you guys to see, but for the rest of us to witness from the outside as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a venue now, miraculously. We've got a venue. We launched on Easter. This week we're 20 weeks in. God keeps sending the people, and now we have a church. We have a fully fledged church that it's miraculous. It came. I don't know how it happened, but it's despite us. It's despite me and all my doubt and all my faith, lack of faith. It's despite that God used us. He was, he just needs your yes. He just needs your yes to say, Lord, here I am. Like, I don't know how this is going to work out. And I so badly needed a plan, and there was no plan. I just had to trust him blindly. And Warren did, and here we are 20 weeks later, living out this dream that Warren dreamed about for 15 years in the making. And Warren says, like, there's nothing else he'd rather be doing. Nothing else in this world like can satisfy the way this can, when you find your purpose in terms of what God is destined for you to do,
Amen. Jen, while you were going through that absolute agony and that desert and that time of excruciating fear, right? Because, I mean, let's just explain it like it is. There's no sugarcoating that emotional place. It's actually very traumatic. I saw a lot of your posts on Facebook where you were literally just sitting in nature with a river in front of you. There's this beautiful tree, and then you just made these beautiful posts of just being in the presence of God. And it almost looked like you were just, were there days where you obviously felt like you didn't know how you were going to get through this day? How do you going to get up? How are you going to just be a mom and just breathe, right? So what did you do during those days? Is that when you went into nature and just drew from God's strength? Tell me a little bit more about those moments.
Yeah, we had a beautiful little lake in our townhome community, and the sunsets are beautiful here, absolutely beautiful, and that would be my little refuge. I just go and sit at that lake, and I learned Banning Liebscher said he taught us this thing that says your job is to love God. And to sit in his presence and to seek intimacy with you. You do your job. His job is to work everything out. Wow. And I was sitting in front of this big task, and Banning says, God's really good at doing his job. So you get good at doing your job because he's good at doing his job. And I was like, okay, that's simple, but I can do that. If I just sit at your feet and sit in your presence and just seek you, I don't know how this is all going to work out. Like, it feels overwhelming. It feels impossible. It felt impossible. But they say God uses the impossible, he uses the unlikely to achieve the impossible. And we felt unlikely, and this felt impossible, this task, and I used to sit feeling overwhelmed, thinking, how are we going to make it? How is this going to pan out? And I just had to, I guess God used that to draw me into his presence, to sit at his feet and say, I don't know how this is going to work it out. And he would say, it's not your job to work it out. My job is to work it out. My job, I'm going to work all things together for good. You just need to seek me and to trust me and to love me through it. And that was a journey for me to learn that. They say that logic screams no and faith whispers yes.
Oh, wow.
And that was me sitting at that lake going, no, logic is no. Like, what is this? What are we doing here? Like, how is this? And faith is the small little whisper of yes. He'll work it out. And he does, and he did, and we're living proof of that. And now we have this beautiful, authentic community that God is building, with our church here, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And this wasn't my dream. Like, this wasn't something that I wanted. I didn't know I wanted this. I didn't know that this would fulfill me in the way that it has. I wanted something else, and what I had to realize is that doesn't satisfy. That was never going to satisfy. This satisfies in a way that I couldn't imagine it would or it could.
It's just amazing, right? That we don't even know what's good for us, but God does. It's so profound, because when I sit in the mornings with my kids, and before they run off to school and take the beautiful yellow bus, which I absolutely love in America, In South Africa, I used to drive myself to pieces after all the kids here. They just bounce on the bus and come back home. It's just phenomenal. But so before they bounce on the bus, we talk a little bit and just connect, just a little bit of moments where I can impart some things still, because they're teenagers, they're all big now, so they don't always want to listen to you. But this morning we really had this blessed moment. And I told them a little bit about your story, and I was bouncing some ideas off them, just trying to find out, what is it that God wants to say. And my daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, said, Mom, and that's what we opened with, is sometimes plans fail for a better future. And I thought, what? This is such a word from God coming from a 17-year-old, teenager.
Those were not my plan. My plans would have been, my brother gave me a little fridge magnet once that said, I'm not bossy, I just have better ideas. And I used to tell the Lord, like, I got an idea, like, I got a good idea, and this is the plan, and this is the way we should go. I always thought I had a better idea, and this was not my plan. This is
and
not
literally
my plan,
all your plans failed, right? I mean, because you came to America, the plan that you had made from South Africa failed. That was non-existent, and there was a big shock. And then every other plan that you made literally failed, until you kind of could surrender.
And I had to yield to his plan.
Wow.
And I had to yield to his plan, and that was difficult for me as a control freak, A-type personality. I wanted to control it. I wanted to have a plan, and this was not my plan. I had to yield, and I had to say, okay, your will, not mine. I had to die to myself and just be like, okay. And that was tough. But what I realized is his plans, he does exceedingly abundantly more than we could hope or imagine if we yield and if we trust to him, and if we just surrender. Like this was really a journey of surrender for me. I just surrender my plans, surrender my dreams, which I thought were great dreams, and I just surrender it all. And he really does. He does, like, turn, they take beauty from ashes and turn your mourning into dancing. He really has done that for me personally. There was, that grieving, that heartache, my heart physically sore in my chest, grieving my life and my family and everything I left behind. He's turned that into joy. Like I can't describe it to you. But I had to walk through that wilderness. I had to walk through that tough pain to come to this point. And it's not my doing, and it's not me at all. Honestly, it's his plan. And this was not my plan. But I'm so grateful. And now, after the first 6 months of resenting my husband, I can look at him now and I can say to him, thank you for this life that you've given us. Like, thank you for this life that you've given us, because this was not my plan, and I always thought I had a better plan. And this was and he was determined. He had such courage. He had such courage, like, to go against what was deemed, to come up with this plan, which I said was reckless. Everybody thought he was crazy. Like, how is this going to pan out? No, it's foolishness. It's reckless. I don't think this is a good idea. And but God, he had such courage. He had such determination, and we're just so thankful. We're so thankful for the opportunity that we have to be here, planting this church, and we're just so thankful. So incredible.
Well, you guys are going to be amazing. I can tell, because your passion and Warren's determination and obedience, I mean, that's a lethal combination. But in a nutshell, just closing off our program today, because we're completely out of time. Some advice for, women out there today that is at that place where you were literally, in the first 6 months, that place of agony and pain and fear and just, so traumatized with circumstances. What would be your advice, getting through that place?
You know what I've learned to do when plans don't work out and when things don't go according to plan? I've just learned to ask God to redeem and reconcile things in a way that you can't. Like, that's my best advice, is to say, Lord, you redeem this and you reconcile it. And when you do that and you surrender and you hand it over and you say, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know. I trust you, but I don't know. I can't figure it out. And he can redeem and restore and reconcile things in a way that you could never, because he works all things together for good. And when you hand that over and surrender that and just keep praying, just keep trusting and saying, God, this is a mess. It's an absolute mess and I can't see my way through. But I know that you do, and you have a purpose and a plan. And would you redeem this, and would you reconcile and restore the situation? And watch how he does it. Like, watch how he does it. We're living proof of that. And it's far better. It's exceeded. It's better than I could have ever imagined it could be. And that's what he does. That's what he says he'll do. And if he'll do it for me, he'll do it for you, you know.
Thank you so much, Jen. That is so powerful. Thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute joy having you here.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be with you. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
And that's it from me, Lorna Grayling and M-powerTV. Please do like and subscribe to our show and share it with someone that you think might benefit from this. If you're in the West Chase area, do go and visit Jen and Warren at Church Experience. Their details will be on the screen. And remember, sometimes plans fail for a better future. Until next week, bye-bye.